This creamy mushroom pasta is one of my new favorite recipes. If you love mushrooms, I'm sure you're going to love this one. First, we're going to need a bunch of mushrooms. I'm using brown cremini ones. I think any combination of mixed mushrooms would be great, but I'll be using just these ones today. We'll cut the mushrooms into thin slices, stems included. We don't want to waste anything. I'm using about 1.5 pounds of mushrooms. And don't worry, I know that it looks like a lot of mushrooms, but we'll be cooking them down, and the size is going to reduce drastically. Next, we'll need 3 shallots. I'll cut lines from the shallot from top to bottom, but not all the way through, and then 1 line through the middle. This will help us dice the shallot into more fine and smaller pieces. When we cook down the shallots, the smaller pieces are going to dissolve right into the sauce. Peel and chop a couple cloves of garlic. I'll cut the garlic the same way as I did the shallot, and I'll chop through all the garlic just to get more even pieces. Place the garlic aside with the shallots, and that's it for our aromatics. Now let's boil our pasta. In a large pot, we'll add in some water and bring it to a boil. Feel free to use any kind of pasta that you like here. Once the water is boiling, we're going to add in some salt to season the water. Be generous with the salt because it's going to help season our pasta. Mix it up with a wooden spoon, and when the water's boiling rapidly, we'll go in with our pasta. I forgot to press record, but I'm using 1 pound of pasta here, and the one I'm using today is cavatappi. And for those that have never seen cavatappi, to me it just looks like a longer piece of macaroni that hasn't been cut yet. Once the pasta's boiling, make sure to just stir it occasionally, and we'll cook the pasta a minute or 2 below what the package says, because later on, we'll be finishing our pasta in the sauce. And before you drain the pasta, we will also reserve some of this water for our sauce. In the same pot, we'll turn the heat on to medium-high. We'll go in with a couple tablespoons of olive oil, and I only went in with half of the mushrooms because I wanted to try to get some browning on them. There were so many mushrooms that there was too much water coming out. So feel free to just throw them all in right now. To help draw out some of the water from the mushrooms, we'll lightly season them with some salt. Mix up the mushrooms with a wooden spoon and continue letting the mushrooms cook down. Since I only went in with half of the mushrooms at the beginning, I'll throw the rest in now. Keep cooking the mushrooms till most of the water is evaporated. This can take a while, but just keep cooking it down. It probably took about 10 minutes or so for mine. The cooking time will vary depending on the type of mushrooms you're using and how many mushrooms you're using. If the mushrooms are browned, you can move on to adding the aromatics. While we're waiting for the mushrooms, I'll grate some Parmesan cheese on the side. This is completely optional, but it's definitely worth it. Pecorino would also be a great option here. It doesn't really matter the size of the Parmesan that we grate because it'll melt into our pasta anyways. I ended up grating about 1.5 cups of the Parmesan. Back to our mushrooms, and they've turned to a deep brown now, and we can finally go in with all of our aromatics. Give it a mix, and cook it for another minute or 2. The smell from the aromatics is just so amazing. The combination of shallots and mushrooms go beautifully together. Add in a tablespoon of dried thyme. If you have fresh thyme, you can use it as well. Give it another mix, and let it cook for another minute or so. Next, we'll need some white wine. Any white wine will do. And if you're worried about cooking with alcohol, you can always leave this out, but we will cook out all the alcohol, and it'll add a lot of great flavor to our pasta. I first went in with a couple glugs. It'll help us deglaze the bottom of the pan. Scrape off the brown bits that are stuck at the bottom, and let it cook for a couple more minutes so that all the alcohol gets burned out. After a couple minutes, we'll add in some chicken stock now. I'm using about 1 cup of chicken stock. This is a homemade chicken broth that I made. I don't see why you couldn't use vegetable stock here as well. And if you don't have any kind of stock, you can just use water. There's so much flavor from the aromatics and the mushrooms already, so don't worry if you don't have any kind of stock. I prepared a cornstarch slurry, not a lot, maybe about half a tablespoon with some water, and I only really use like a tablespoon of this mixture. This will help thicken the sauce at the end. Bring the sauce back up so it's simmering, and when it starts bubbling, we'll go in with our pasta to finish cooking it. If your pasta clumped up like mine, it's okay. With the heat from the pot, we can separate the pasta pretty easy. Use a wooden spoon and try to break up the big clumps. Once all the chunks are broken up, we'll add in some pasta water now. The pasta water is going to help bind the sauce to the noodles. Keep mixing up the pasta, and we can see that there is a little bit of water here. When we take the pasta off the heat, it's going to absorb a lot of this water, and we also don't want it to be too dry. So I'll go in with just another splash of the pasta water. And to make the pasta a little bit more healthy, I'll go in with a couple handfuls of spinach. The heat from the pasta will wilt the spinach pretty quickly. Also, I'm going to go in with a couple tablespoons of butter. This will make the sauce more rich, and it'll give it a nice shine to it. Mix it up, and if it looks too dry, just add in more pasta water. In goes the Parmesan cheese. Save some for later if you want to have some on top. One final mix, and we'll give it a taste. Adjust the seasoning with salt and pepper to your liking. The only time we added salt in the sauce was with the mushrooms, so I definitely needed to add some more for seasoning. Now let's transfer the pasta to a plate. There's a lot here, so you need a pretty big plate. And there it is. Mushroom pasta. It's pretty easy to make, and it doesn't take that many ingredients. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And I hope you have a great day.